The way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. Hey, the good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things or make them unimportant. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and we're talking about one of the greatest episodes of the revived era, Vincent and the Doctor. Written by legendary scriptwriter Richard Curtis, which would be his only script for the series. He is a very prolific writer who's written for films like Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and many other high-profile rom-coms, and is directed by Johnny Campbell. Now, this story tackles the legendary famous Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh, whose paintings weren't very popular at the time of his lifetime, however, have become phenomenous as some of the best art of planet Earth. And this story seems to not only celebrate that, but also is a loving tribute to the painter in a way that is very reminiscent of early Hartnell stories like Marco Polo and the Crusades, in which Doctor Who would really get into history. We've never really had a historical like this in a long time, something which would actually become a norm for the series when Chris Chibnall took over the series in 2018. But getting ahead of myself. This story is considered by many as one of, if not the best Doctor Who story of all time, looking into the life of a famous painter and bringing history basically to life in a way which will get viewing audiences interested in the life of said painter. This is just absolutely fascinating to me, because back when Doctor Who was created, Sidney Newman, one of the founding fathers of Doctor Who, originally conceived the show as an educational program with the futuristic stuff teaching children about science and moral stories, whilst the historical will teach us about history with stories set with Marco Polo, the Aztecs, and is less to do with the monsters and the fighting and the bug-eyed aliens, and more to do with experiencing history and showing us a new light in which would get kids interested in. So in this way, this is probably the most Doctor Who-ish story that we've had in a while, according to Sidney Newman. This is something that would bring Sidney Newman a lot of joy, I suspect, and with something that really honours the legacy of what Doctor Who was created for. But yeah, what can I say? It's Vincent and the Doctor, one of the most popular, beloved stories of all time. And I think I don't know how I'm going to stretch this, because there's nothing really I could say that hasn't been said before. It's one of the most heartbreaking, most loved stories in the series, and the fact that Richard Curtis only wrote one story and he made that story count just shows how great he is as a writer. Seriously, if you haven't seen this guy's work before, I highly recommend that you do. He's a very big writer in the British industry. He's mainly known for doing rom-coms, films that star Hugh Grant, which, if that's your kind of thing, if that's not your kind of thing, then fair enough if you don't try them. But if you like his work here, I do highly recommend you try out his other stuff. And the fact, he's also known, mostly known for me anyway, as one of the writers for Blackadder and Not the 9 O'Clock News. I think he was one of the creators of the Not the 9 O'Clock News. I think so. But yeah, he's done a lot of work for TV and film, and to see him take on Doctor Who at the start of the Matt Smith era is just a testament to how great Stephen Moffat's legacy is, that he would get such prolific writers onto the series. If only he had like Stephen King onto the series. That would have been really cool. I would love to see. I think Stephen King's style of horror would work really well with Doctor Who. But anyway, I'm baffling now. So the story starts off. We first get like the pre-credit sequence. We see like a painting of Van Gogh as we see him making a painting, and he sees something in the breeze of the long grass. And right off the bat, this story looks gorgeous. The directing by Johnny Campbell, who also directed previously The Vampires in Venice, really shows off that he knows how to direct a story set in the past. He has this very particular style that these two stories share very similar in common. But this story also feels very unique into Doctor Who, with the colour palette being very reminiscent of Van Gogh's painting, with a lot of bright blues and reds and yellows. And so it's almost like you're watching his paintings come to life in certain scenes, but it really doesn't distract from the story and the narrative. It still feels like Doctor Who, just a much more brighter Doctor Who in basically this, not really the style of Van Gogh, but seems to emulate it in a very loving tribute way. And we also then get a scene before the credits roll where the Doctor and Amy are in an art gallery looking at Van Gogh's painting, with Amy explaining, it's like, thank you for doing this. You're being extra kind to me. You've taken me to all these lovely places where there's not much danger. You've taken me to all of these lovely places. It's like you're being too kind. It's being a bit suspicious. And the Doctor is kind of closed off here, and he's like, no, it's not suspicious. What do you want about? And we also hear this man basically talking about the life of Van Gogh. Let's talk about this man, because this is, what's his name? The curator of this gallery is, I believe it's something Black, Professor Black. And he goes uncredited in the credits, which is in a strange, just a very strange detail, because he's played by Bill Nye. As in, that Bill Nye. What the hell? You have one of the most biggest actors in British history, Davy Jones, and you don't even credit him for his small role in Doctor Who? That's really bizarre. It's really odd. It reminds me of what's his name from John Cleese, his cameo from City of Death. I think he was credited for that one, but Bill Nye was not credited for his cameo here, despite him having a few scenes. And he basically explains about Van Gogh's life and how he's this amazing painter, but however he was a tortured soul in his time, and he sadly took his own life due to his mental health. And the Doctor is looking at one of these paintings, this painting of the church, and he notices something odd, something that's not supposed to be there. Inside the window there seems to be a face of an alien entity, and so that is where the credits roll. And so then we get into the actual episode. A great setup for the story, a great little beat. Bill Nye can narrate the phone book and make it sound interesting, let alone this golden piece of dialogue about Van Gogh's life. And it's glad as well that he gets just a few scenes as after the credit sequences. The Doctor asks Bill Nye about when Van Gogh painted that painting, when exactly in the history of time. And so the Doctor takes Amy to meet Vincent van Gogh during his lifetime, and we get some very stunning tributes to his art. As someone who, I would say I'm a fan of Van Gogh, but I will admit that I am not the biggest expert by far. I love his paintings and I adore his art style. one of my favourite films is actually this film called Love and Vincent, which is an animated film in the style of Van Gogh. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. However, it's not really about Van Gogh's life. It's about this mystery about why he killed himself. But go watch that if you haven't seen it. And Van Gogh the Doctor and Amy are looking for Van Gogh, and they see the cafe from one of his paintings, and it's astonishing. You know, the production team here, Johnny Campbell's directing. It's almost like the painting has just come to real life. It's astonishing how accurate this cafe is to the legendary painting, and we get a lot of great tributes with a lot of shots being very reminiscent of his art style, referencing his paintings, and it just gives this story a very unique visual style, but in a way that actually is just an absolute loving tribute to this very legendary figure as we get introduced to him as he gets chucked out of this cafe. Because Vincent van Gogh is a legendary painter in our own time, but what we got to know about him, and what this story does fantastically well at explaining to us, is that at the time he wasn't considered a great painter. In fact, a lot of people laughed at his work, and a big part of that is his reputation as a crazy man, as somebody who rambles on and is very unstable and can get quite excited and is quite energetic. Of course, we would later now learn that Van Gogh suffered from bipolar disorder, and I don't want to get personal here, but I have known people who have suffered from bipolar disorder, and it can be a real big struggle, and it can affect people's mood swings and the people around them and how they see the world. And this story does such a loving tribute to it, and this story basically helps deal with, basically explains his mind process and his philosophy and his mindset and how his illness has taken effect of him. Fun fact, when this story aired, I don't know if it's on the DVD, I watched this on BBC iPlayer, but when it was aired, when the story ended, the BBC actually put in a hotline for anybody who wanted to know more about topics that were mentioned inside this story to do with suicide and bipolar disorder. So, you know, that's just really cool on the BBC's behalf, and this is one of the reasons why this story is so well beloved. It tackles, it not only does a lot of other things, like it shows Amy's pain after the death of Rory Williams, after the events of Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, in which Rory ceases to exist and Amy seems to have completely forgotten about him. However, here it's established that she isn't quite there, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of scenes in which she's just kind of focusing on herself and she seems sad, and the doctor kind of knows this. He kind of sees that the pain, and also Van Gogh also sees it as well, mentioning how he can see the pain of someone gone in Amy's face, and when Amy doesn't even know what he's on about, Van Gogh points out that she is crying, and the shot of Karen Gillan realizing that she's crying, and then it cuts to Matt Smith, and he knows why, but he can't bring himself to confront Amy with it, so he changes the subject. Phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal writing right there. Just Richard Curtis does a really fantastic job here. The story has a very romanticized feel about it. The majority of the story is less to do with plot and more to do with character and the relationship between our three leads. And the plot itself is actually something which I feel like a lot of people have criticised during the time the story aired, saying that there's a lot of heart moments and stuff, but the actual narrative about this invisible, half bear, half parrot thing was kind of ridiculous. However, looking back, a lot of people have think that this is actually a very strong aspect of the story, because it's all about representation and symbolism. The villain of the story, the actual villain's plot or the plan or the whatever it was, isn't really important to what this story is trying to say. It's what it represents. An invisible creature, an entity that wants to harm and kill, but it's completely invisible to our characters, except for Van Gogh. It's never explained. I kind of like that. I get the implication is that his bipolar disorder is what's making him see it, but I like how it's not really explained, because connecting a superpower with bipolar like that, I feel like might have been a bit insensitive. I don't really know, but I do think it was better that they kind of let him. Yeah, and it's more about the symbolism, as we have a creature that lashes out and attacks whenever it can, and actually hurts and kills people. And when people find out about the dead people, they instantly blame Van Gogh, as he seems to be a crazy lunatic that seems to be connected some way to these deaths. And there's just some really great moments here. Like, there's a great moment where we have our characters, they're walking to the church which Van Gogh needs to paint. However, they pass the funeral of the girl that got murdered earlier on in the episode that made people throw rocks and stones at Van Gogh, because they felt like his presence, him being a madman in the presence of a dead person, would be immoral, undignified. So they kind of just throw him out of the city in that regard. And the story takes a nice little, not like a breather, but a nice little slow beat of our characters just standing there quietly, putting their hats down, putting their heads down as the funeral walks past them. And I love the colour in here, as everything in the background almost becomes like black and white. Like sepia tone colour, with the exception of on the coffin, there's these sunflowers. Van Gogh famously painted this phenomenal painting of these almost dying sunflowers, and they are the ones that bright out, that shine in this scene of white and grey colours. And it's just such a great visual metaphor here. Especially there's a scene as well where Van Gogh is talking about sunflowers, and he's not quite sure whether he should paint them, as Amy basically tries to push it, because the Doctor and Amy are big fans and know of his work in the future. But Van Gogh is like, I'm not quite sure if I even like sunflowers. I like them, but they're not exactly my favourite. They seem to be trapped in this moment of beautiful life and decay and death. In that way, they're kind of hideous, but it would be a nice challenge. I also like how, when they get to Van Gogh's house, Amy and the Doctor are just astonished by the work. But Van Gogh, who has lived in his time in which he feels like he's the only one who really appreciates his work, he's just like, I'm sorry about the mess and cut that, don't praise me, don't try to flatter me, I know my work is terrible. And there's scenes where he's making coffee and he puts it on top of his paintings, leaving a coffee mark. There's also a scene in which, after seeing the creature, the Doctor asks him to paint it, so he just takes one of his canvases and just paints over it, whilst the Doctor's just like, no, oh no, that was a really nice painting. And the scene in which they're in his house is probably one of the most important scenes in this story, as Van Gogh really starts to connect with Amy and the Doctor in a way that he hasn't before. These people really do appreciate his company, and despite him needing him for the necessity of the plot and to stop this creature, they do really appreciate his work, and he's never felt anything like that. And there's a scene in which the Doctor, at the start of the story, he kind of tries to push the Doctor away. He finds him a bit odd how somebody is taking such fascination with his work. The fact that this is probably the only person he's met that's even been interested in his work, probably from his point of view, make him feel uncertain, kind of like like when you do something and you're not happy with it, but somebody like over compliments you, and you kind of feel like they're kind of doing it to be kind or trying to be in some way insultive or laugh at you. I guess it's kind of like that. You kind of get that feeling. However, spending time with the Doctor, and there's a great moment where Van Gogh is getting really energetic, and he's explaining to the Doctor about how nature seems to be calling him to as a challenge, and he must go to the thing, and he grabs the Doctor by the collar, and the Doctor is just like staring at him at the sadness, and the Doctor's just like, okay, maybe coffee isn't the right thing. Maybe we need some nice calming tea. And throughout the story, the scene, Van Gogh really becomes just really connected with Amy and the Doctor in a way that, if you know the life of the artist, he has never had that before. And then we get a scene in which the Doctor, because Van Gogh said, oh, you can stay the night, but just one night earlier on because of what I was saying about earlier. And so the Doctor's just like, we need you to come to the church so we can stop this monster. And then don't worry, right after we will leave you alone in peace. And Van Gogh hears this, and there's a great shot where he's by the door, and you can see in his face, there's this turmoil in his face. He's like, he kind of realises what's happening, and he's gained these new friends, but he doesn't want to see him leave. And then we cut then to a scene in which the Doctor wakes up Van Gogh in the morning in a scene which is very reminiscent of his bedroom painting. In fact, it's like the exact same shots again. Very stunning tribute. Again, just praise to Johnny Campbell's directing here and his authenticity to Van Gogh's painting. But Van Gogh is crying, he's in utter pain, and he explains, like, you disappear, you go, it'll happen with you, and I know how this is going to end, and it's not going to end well. And Van Gogh is talking sense in that regard, because, he has lived a horrible life as a drunk and as a bipolar and somebody who, as a failed painter at his time, and he knows that, he's just living in misery, and he's just continuing to live misery, and the two people who seem to give him happiness, basically are going to leave him. But the Doctor knows the much more darker, real fate of Van Gogh, and it's perfectly portrayed in the acting. Let's talk about the acting for a second, because Van Gogh here is played by the legendary Tony Curran, who, wow, looks like Van Gogh, acts like Van Gogh, absolutely perfect for the role. This has got to be one of the most perfect castings in the entire series of Doctor Who. I mean, after watching the story, I literally can't picture Van Gogh in any other way. He gives this, honest to God, real performance here, and really, it's something that you can't explain. You just have to watch. It is Oscar worthy, if I had to say so myself. The three leads here, with the Doctor, with Matt Smith, with Amy and Karen Gillan, with Vincent Van Gogh and Tony Curran. Wow, this is just wow. Again, I feel really stupid because I can't really get this story out into words, but there's just so many great scenes. The story is also incredibly funny, with some really great highlights being when Van Gogh is basically told by the Doctor and Amy to paint the famous painting of the church, which kind of changes history, because now he didn't paint that because he liked the church, though he does say he likes the church, but mainly because the Doctor and Amy made him to, so they can find this creature. But there's a great moment in which Van Gogh basically wants to be quiet, wants quiet so he can paint and work, but the Doctor, who isn't used to quietness, just constantly starts rambling about other famous painters he has met, and Amy and Van Gogh basically tell him to shut up. And there's a great line in which the Doctor says something like, is this how time moves for you lot? Very slowly and in order. But Richard Curtis, he does rom-coms. It should be no surprise that he does comedy very well, but that line got a massive laugh out of me. And so they confront this creature, and we later learn that the creature is actually blind, and the reason it's not attacking because it's vicious and evil, it's that it physically cannot see, and it's scared, it's frightened of what it doesn't understand, so it's clawing away at because it just doesn't understand. It's a beast after all. And when Van Gogh kills it by accident, he feels really distorted by this, and he's like, I really didn't want to do it, I just wanted to wound it. And then he compares the invisible monster to the people who attacked him, how they didn't understand him. To them, he was invisible, or at least the understanding is all invisible. And he compares the creature to the people who tortured him. And so we start off, the ending is a bit long. The wrap-up is a bit long. However, it's totally worth it. This is one of the reasons why this story is considered so high in the canon of Doctor Who. So I'm going to state this now. Spoiler warning. If you have not watched this episode, whether you're interested in it or not, do not watch the rest of it. Go and watch the episode. It's one of the highlights of the episode. So, the Doctor and Amy are about to say farewell. And the Doctor has an idea, an amazing idea. As he tells Van Gogh to get dressed, we're going to take him somewhere as a surprise, as a treat for helping him on this fighting monster little adventure. And he takes Van Gogh to the TARDIS. And Van Gogh's reaction is priceless. I love how the line was like, you've lived in this, and yet you're the sane ones. And the Doctor and Amy don't really tell him what's going on. Just having like a laugh, don't really tell him it's a time machine. But when they do travel, they travel and take Van Gogh to the future, to 2010 AD. I love the fact that the Doctor says AD. I don't know why, but that's just, I don't know, I just really like that. And they take Van Gogh to the art expedition at the start of the episode, where Van Gogh can see his art, his work be appreciated. Sorry, I'm starting to tear up. Hey, and this man, we've seen throughout the story that he has suffered, and that the only thing that's really given him joy is these paintings, which nobody in his lifetime understands and think they're all terrible. But here they are as some of art's greatest pieces of work. And the Doctor, making Van Gogh over here, gets Bill Nye's character to explain what Van Gogh means to him, as he explains that he turned his pain and suffering into art, into a way which would, not just beauty, but in a way which just purely shows what he means as a person. And Van Gogh starts breaking down into tears and starts hugging the Doctor and Bill Nye as the emotions overwhelm. And so the Doctor takes him back to his own time, and Van Gogh is a new man. He's smiling, he's cheerful. He's like, don't worry, Doctor, you are the first doctor I've ever met that's actually changed my life for the better. There are many life for me to come, as I will go now and do great things, knowing that my work will be greatly honoured in the future. And so the Doctor and Amy, and so Amy asks the Doctor to go straight back to the art expedition, as Amy believes that times will change. They've helped Van Gogh, they've helped him for the better, so that when they go back into the art gallery, there should be thousands, millions of more paintings, as Van Gogh has now seen a new life and would have been happy after the event of the episode. They did not change time. Van Gogh still committed suicide a month after the events of the story. And Amy just cannot handle it. And the Doctor gives her this hug and explains how, life isn't, about stopping the bad. It's, life is just full of good things and bad moments, really bad moments, but it doesn't always necessarily bring out, stop the light. And all we've done, really, is bring just so much light into somebody who is conflicted with a lot of good and a lot of bad. And they've brought a little light into that world. As Amy notices a painting, a particular painting, and something has changed. Time has changed. In the church, the painting of the monster's gone, but Amy notices a different painting as she walks up with that music and her walking up in that shot where she realises, and they go up to that famous painting of the sunflowers, and it's changed to not only Van Gogh putting his name onto it, but also stating that the painting was for Amy. And that is Vincent and the Doctor. I'm just getting teared up just thinking about it. I don't do ratings, but this is a 10 out of 10. By far, this is stuff that I absolutely love Doctor Who doing. It's something that Doctor Who hasn't done since the first era, since the first Doctor, in which it really connects with the history and does it in a way to tell great emotionally driven storytelling, which brings back to some of my favourite episodes like the Aztecs and Marco Polo. And that ending, man, I know a lot of people rant on of how amazing that ending is, but it is truly one of the best endings that a show like Doctor Who can ask for. And it really is just a great tribute to Van Gogh. And so that is Vincent and the Doctor. Overall, if I haven't made it clear already, this is probably an episode that you should watch. This is an episode which really needs to be experienced to watch. I hope I haven't built it up too much, but honestly, this is one of the most memorable Doctor Who stories for a reason. This is actually one of the most popular stories. I remember going into school the day after in my arts class, and everyone was talking about Van Gogh and how amazing a painter he is. And they learned about him, they experienced his, they learned who he was. They don't know who he was prior to this episode. I didn't know who prior he was to this episode. But we all learned about this fantastic, amazing man through an episode of Doctor Who. And only Doctor Who can do something like that. It's amazing, it's astonishing. This story contains so much power that a lot of writers would die to even get a glimpse of this kind of potential. And I think Richard Curtis should write a 13th Doctor. This type of storyline would be a blueprint into the 13th Doctor's historicals, in which they are much more character and historically driven than the physical plot and the baddies and all that. So I want to see more episodes like this. I'm glad that I got more episodes like this later on, but this is easily by far one of the best episodes like this. I don't think really you can beat it. It's Vincent and the Bloody Doctor. The ultimate ginger. So that's Vincent and the Doctor. So join me next time where we go back to K9 and Company. So join me next time for, I believe it's called Alienation. Alien Avatar, sorry. So join me next time for Alien Avatar. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!